All right, welcome to the second set of readings, 1 Kings chapters 3 and 4. Today's video will probably be a little shorter. By way of recap, in the previous reading, David had transitioned out. David had died, had set up Solomon, and Solomon took ownership, as it were. He became aggressive and cleaning house, as we might say. It's interesting that when Absalom back in 2 Samuel had temporarily taken over Jerusalem in the stead of David and exiled David temporarily, of course, that Absalom, the first thing he did was take David's concubines and engage with them in intercourse publicly in front of people to show that he was the new man and that he had certain social dominance. What Solomon does, rather than that foolishness, was to take care of administrative tasks within the kingdom. And so we left off last time with the question, how is it we've got a barometer with past experience, Saul and David, to measure Solomon by. All right, how is Solomon going to do? Well, and here in chapter number 3, he starts off, he's making an alliance with the Pharaoh of Egypt by marrying his daughter. Now, it doesn't say anything negative about this. In fact, it's setting up, at this point, looking like he did a good thing. Sometimes those kinds of marriages in the Old Testament, they're all subject to interpretation. Some of them will be viewed as being the wrong thing. Others will be viewed as being a wise thing. And so it's not a blanket thing. It's a case-by-case thing. It's more apt when somebody is operating, this is something we see in the Old Testament, when somebody is doing right, then everything that they're doing is right. And when somebody's doing wrong, everything they're doing is going to be wrong. And in this case, what Solomon is doing seems to be right. It was very normal for nations to form an alliance by marrying the royal offspring, and that is what has happened. Also, I'll throw this out there. It was also in the Jewish world, as well as the rest of the Mediterranean and the Middle Eastern world, that two different households may even form an alliance by arranging to marry, for their children to marry. And that's part of why, divorce is never good overall, right? It's a painful thing. It's an unhealthy thing. Although, in certain cases, that it is the only reasonable option. However, overall, it's just one of those things that's a necessary evil. But when we read it in Scripture, another element to divorce that makes it problematic is that when an alliance was based, even from between two households in the same village, because their children married each other, a divorce would have very drastic ramifications on the peace of a village, the peace within that community. And so that's one of the things about divorce in the ancient world. Just throwing that out there. So Solomon, he marries the Pharaoh's daughter, brings her there to Jerusalem. He is making sacrifices at the right places, doing the right things. Remember Saul, his initial downfall was he had conducted himself problematically with sacrifices. Solomon's doing sacrifices right. In fact, God is happy with Solomon and is going to come to him, and because he's being faithful so far, and is going to grant him a wish. And Solomon's wish is to have wisdom, specifically in administration, governments, judicial things, to be able to appropriately create policy and law. Well, God was impressed with Solomon's request. He didn't ask for money. He didn't ask for a longer life. He asked for wisdom. And so, in verse 14, well, even before then, I'm going to give you more than that. I'm going to make you the greatest king of your generation. And if you follow me just as your father did, then I will grant you long life. That's interesting, because David had his issues, and here now I think that here looking at it in past tense, history always has a way of massaging out some of the gray areas, perhaps, and we're going to remember the best of David, and that's fine, perhaps. So Solomon wakes up from this dream where he had interacted with God. He's going to sacrifice even more. I mean, he's on fire, as it were. I mean, actually, no pun intended, right? And so there's going to be an example of his wisdom. Might not seem wisdom to us, but evidently in that ancient Near East culture, this was profound. There's two prostitutes that are living in the same home, and they each have infants. And, prostitution in the ancient world, there were prohibitions, but yet at the same time, they were very much a matter of fact kind of part of life, even in Hebrew society. But anyway, nevertheless, each of these prostitutes have infants, and one of them rolls over and suffocates her infant, and she's going to switch out these infants. They must still be very young, I'm guessing. She's going to exchange her infant with the other prostitutes. Well, the mother wakes up, realizes that the deceased infant is not her infant. What are they going to do? How are they going to solve this civil matter? It goes to the king. That's what kings of the ancient Near East were. They were legal judges as well. Well, Solomon, in all of his wisdom, he's got an idea. Hey, let's take a sword, cut the child in half, and we'll give each half of it to each woman, and their problem solved. And of course, the woman who's the real mother says, "Don't do that. Just give the child to the other lady." And so it was a trick, but yet it showed who was the one who had more of the nurturing precedent for this child, and to them that was quite a manifestation of wisdom. All right, so now moving over into chapter number 4. Yeah, this video is not going to be as short as I thought it was. Here we've got a list of the people that Solomon are utilizing, and then it gets interesting at the end of chapter number 4. The people of Judah and Israel, they are innumerable as the sand. They had plenty to eat and drink. They were happy. This is very engaging language for the Old Testament. They're innumerable. It's the promises of Abraham that's being fulfilled. I've spoken before of how a household would have as many children as possible. That was necessary. And so, in the sense, to have as many people as possible, I mean, that's a sign of great honor in this kingdom. Not only that, they had plenty to eat and drink. That was very rare, where subsistent and agricultural living was very hard on them. And his kingdom, the expanse of it was impressive, the greatest that Israel would ever experience. And then down in verse 29, God has given Solomon wisdom infinite like the seashore. Solomon's wiser than everyone Everybody's knowing about it all around the world and going to him. He's writing 3,000 proverbs and over 1,000 songs. He wrote a manual on botany, um, and manuals on biology, describing animals and birds and fish. Everybody's coming to hear about Solomon. Wow, this is impressive. And he's starting off, I mean, it's continuing to be on a bang. This is unparalleled even by David. Didn't start off this intriguing, I don't think. David, we had a long history of him fighting and running and all of this before he ever became king, and then it was kind of a letdown. Solomon here, he's an engaging dude. Okay, I'll see you again on tomorrow's reading.